Transfers. Joining us now from the Club World Cup is a man keeping a very close eye on the transfer market while he's there, and that is Ben Jacobs. Good afternoon, Ben.
Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon, gents. How are you?
Very
good,
well,
thanks.
Thank you. Very good indeed.
Yeah, maybe we should kick off with this Jadon Sancho story and this Fenerbahce interest. There'd been a lot of talk about other players being used as make weights to get it done, a possible move to Italy. But what do we know about this sort of Jose link?
Yeah, I think Fenerbahce and also Napoli are leading the race at the moment for Jadon Sancho. Manchester United haven't had any bids yet, but there's contact on the player's side. And Fenerbahce are really pushing. My understanding is that Jose Mourinho and Sancho have had a face-to-face Zoom or whatever appropriate technology they use, and they've spoken about this project. And then financially speaking, Fenerbahce have got big budget. We're really seeing Turkish clubs be ambitious this summer. We know that Galatasaray won the race for Leroy Sané, but Fenerbahce were there, and the same kind of salary offered to Sané is available to Sancho. The challenge is good money isn't Manchester United money, and therefore there may still be a gulf in valuation regarding the terms. Manchester United want 25 million, and if Fenerbahce get the green light from Sancho in the next few days or weeks, they'll approach Manchester United. They prefer to pay about £50 million. I think Manchester United are going to stick to that number of 25 million. And then concurrently, Napoli have got a meeting this week with the Sancho camp as well, and Serie A might be an option. You've got Saudi Arabian interest too, Al Ali in particular, and possibly Al Nassr if they don't get their top target, Luis Diaz. But there were approaches made to Sancho 12 months ago. He wasn't that keen on Saudi Arabia, and at the moment I'm told the player's position hasn't changed.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Now, one thing that is often talked about in the window but never really happens are swap deals. They often talk about swap deals, but I imagine there's all sorts of intricate business reasons why they're difficult to pull off. The latest one is Garnacho for Nkunku. Both were moving in the opposite direction. What are the chances of that happening, Ben?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much in this other than the fact that in the winter it was discussed and Manchester United didn't want to proceed with Nkunku. Chelsea had a very high valuation. Nkunku is still hoping that Bayern Munich come in. But it all felt a bit coincidental to me because Chelsea are about to place a bid for Jamie Gittins, their third attempt. And the expectation is they'll get that over the line. He's their top choice on that left-hand side. And even if you factor Sancho plus Mudryk being charged now by the FA, the expectation is that Chelsea only want one on that left-hand side simply because of the fact that they feel Giovanni Quenda arriving in 12 months' time will give them another option there. So Chelsea's priority at the moment is Gittins, not Garnacho. And at the same time as they're about to hopefully get that one complete, you've also got a second bid, as we revealed on talkSPORT last night, for Brian Mbeumo going in for in excess of £60 million. And then suddenly both of the clubs have got these other options, and it feels a bit like leverage to make it clear, perhaps even publicly through the media, that there is a backup option. But the expectation is that Gittins goes to Chelsea and Mbeumo goes to Manchester United, and then there's no room for Nkunku at Manchester United or Garnacho at Chelsea.
Wow. Bradley Barcola is an interesting one.
Yeah, this is really
often, comes off the bench for a PSG, maybe looking to be, a starter in every game.
Yeah.
Arsenal have been linked, apparently, but so have Bayern and Liverpool.
Yeah, a lot of these clubs like Barcola, PSG have got quite a firm position that they want to keep the player, and therefore he'd have to agitate for a move. It's going to be really difficult. We're not in the kind of Xavi Simons territory where the player's already ready to leave Leipzig, and that's why some Premier League clubs, including Spurs, are circling with Barcola. PSG's whole philosophy is around buy young and where possible buy French, and Desiree Doué is another good example of that. And these kind of profiles are not necessarily players that PSG want to lose. So I think it's going to take too big a number if there was to be any progress and the player to really agitate for a move. It's true that Arsenal and Andrea Berta in particular have held a conversation. I'm not so sure there's too much at this stage in the Liverpool links, and Juventus are really pushing as well, and they view Barcola as one of their top targets. But my expectation is that PSG are going to be not just reluctant sellers, but might not even engage over financials. So unless the player hands in a transfer request, it's still looking more likely that he'll stay at the French champions.
Now, Dusan Vlahovic not been quite the same hit at Juve as he was at Fiorentina, but he's still only 25, and it seems that he could be available. when he's at it, I mean, he is a great goal scorer, but his wages, I imagine, are fairly crazy, aren't they, Ben?
Yeah, not necessarily crazy compared to big six teams. He'd fit comfortably in a top 5 or top 10 in terms of the wage bill at one of the clubs that he's often linked with. I think at this stage, Manchester United, who are perhaps the most recent club to be linked, are still just drawing up a list of targets. We know that they've also had outreach for Hugo Ekitike, and Liverpool could be there too. But there's nothing really advanced at this stage. And when Chelsea have looked in the past, and even Manchester United exploring the deal, not in a advanced or getting anything excited about, just a normal phone call to understand, is the player available or not? And you'd be surprised how many clubs make these, and therefore how many players technically they've made outreach for. But there are some concerns about his injury record. He's had persistent groin problems, and to unlock the Vlahovic case, first Juve are going to have to bring in an important striker. So this might be one for a little bit later in the window. The player, I'm told, is open to the Premier League, but none of these clubs have actually made a formal approach to Juventus yet. Chelsea are downplaying suggestions that they could come to the table, and actually the sort of number 9 they may add might not be a number 9. It could be a player more in the Christopher Nkunku mode, and that's where João Pedro and Mohamed Kudus come in, along with other names like Morgan Rogers. So Vlahovic may have to be patient if he's to leave Juventus, and the first thing that will happen there is Juve will find a number 9, and then Vlahovic may genuinely become available on the market.
And finally, Eberechi has been linked to Tottenham before. Last summer it didn't happen. So it's happening again this summer. What's your understanding around this one?
Yeah, I think there's a concrete possibility that Tottenham enter the race for Eberechi Eze, just because Matis Tel has stayed permanently, which was always expected. It doesn't mean that they're not going to look for another versatile player that can obviously be utilised on that side or in a more central position. There's a £68 million release clause. Crystal Palace's position is clear. Side if he wants to join, and then he will be the one that actually then subsequently triggers the clause. And that might sound simple when I spell it out, but it is a bit of an atypical and complicated clause. And my understanding is also that, like Elise, the player actually gains a bit of a boost or a commission if the clause is triggered, so it can benefit him to have the clause triggered rather than a different kind of deal. And that was the case with Elise as well. So Tottenham are definitely interested. Their priority is more the right side, and we know that they've already made outreach to Semenya, but there you have to pay more than Tottenham did for Dominic Solanke, £65 million package or more. So it looks like they're going to explore other options. Tyler Dibbling is still on the list on that right-hand side, and Xavi Simons, as I said, a more central player that could be very useful and beneficial in a Thomas Frank system. But keep an eye on the Eze situation. The Tottenham interest is concrete. It's just a fact it's a costly deal, and in likelihood you're going to either have to trigger or match the clause.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks,
as always,
Ben.
we'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers.
There we are. There's Ben Jacobs there with the latest on the transfer market. Don't forget all the latest transfer news. You can check out the Transfer Insiders podcast on the talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts, or check out our live blog at talksport.com.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.